We are committed to maintaining peace and stability in the South China Sea, managing differences and disputes through dialogue and addressing disputes through negotiation, consultation, in a peaceful manner, and exploring ways to achieve mutual benefit through cooperation.
That was President Xi Jinping addressing concerns expressed by the United States about navigational freedoms in the South China Sea. Welcome back to The Heat. President Xi discussed a number of topics with US President Barack Obama, including climate change and cybersecurity, during an official visit at the White House. On Monday, the Chinese president will address the General Assembly of the United Nations. Now, joining us from Beijing is Victor Gao. He's a Chinese international relations expert and translator. And with us here in our Washington studio is Cheng Li. He's director of the China Center at the Brookings Institution. Cheng Li, I want to start with you because you were actually in Seattle with President Xi. You got to meet him and have a few words, but we won't talk about that. What's your overall impression of the state visit so far?
Well, it has been a very successful trip. And President Obama said this morning that the meeting was extremely productive. He used the term extremely productive. And Biden in today's lunch also said that looking back 30 years later, this is a historical moment. Our two leaders did the right thing. Now, for Xi Jinping, it has been a really wonderful trip. And from Seattle, he won really the hearts and minds of the people who attended that dinner.
Really, you felt that in the room?
Oh, absolutely. That there's no. I talked to many people. No single one said it's bad. They all say really pleasant surprise because to a certain extent the expectation is low. But on the other hand, there are a lot of misunderstanding or cynicism. But the fact that he addressed all these issues and whether cyber or economy or human rights, NGO, and etc. He frequently quoted American, Mark Twain's, Ernest Hemingway's, and Luther Martin King, and in a very right way. So that has been very, very effective. The early guest that Ambassador John Huntsman mentioned that the human rights leader, this is exactly what he wants. So he got the respect. And also this morning, I was in the White House long for the ceremony. I also got a warm welcome. And the same things with lunch. I don't know how the media will portray. Of course, there will be criticism. There's still some misunderstanding. But I think so far has been very, very successful trip.
Let's get the view from Beijing. Victor Gao, how's it playing out back home in China?
Well, this is the headline news for all the last few days. And President Xi Jinping apparently has made a spectacular success in his stay in Seattle, and the first day in Washington, D.C. Is also turning out to be a spectacular success. And I think most people here in China are very much focused on this. They watch all the events and follow the movements by President Xi Jinping, by his wife. And so far, people are very much excited about the progress being made. And I think today, Washington time, will be the most important day for this state visit. The interesting and private and confidential discussions between President Xi Jinping and President Obama, and the frequent chances they may have today for exchanging ideas, compare notes, sharing their grievances or concerns about the bilateral relations, but ultimately setting the tone for the bilateral relations for the years or even the future decades to come. This is really turning out to be a truly historic landmark in China-US relations and may have implications for many, many years to come.
Cheng Li, what was the highlight and what was the lowlight, if you like, in the trip? Seattle, of course, was a success, but what about here in Washington as well? What tripped up the two in terms of not being able to get to an agreement?
Well, so far it has been pretty good. I assume that this afternoon he visited Capitol Hill, met with several senators. Well, I do not see the report, but again, I think certainly there will be some exchange of concerns from the U.S. side. But on the other hand, I think that he will be surprised to see that the U.S. senators actually also want to emphasize the importance of this bilateral relationship. And Xi Jinping said that this morning it's a new chapter of U.S.-China relations. And he also, in the lunchtime, and actually it's not translated appropriately in English, he said that last night he talked to Obama for 3 hours. At a certain moment, he was moved by President Obama, and he used the 感动. This is a Chinese term. So it's a fascinating.
Explain the Chinese.
Well, it's just moved, touched by certain things. We do not know exactly what happened, but you do see that
this
after
connection.
several meetings and over the years, this time probably is the most important one. You do see they build up a kind of friendship.
Okay.
I think will carry long weight.
You've been in the room. What about the areas of friction? We're talking about cyber here. We're talking about obviously South China Sea, close-in flights by U.S. aircraft or China coast. It doesn't look like those are being solved. They're being managed, maybe.
Well, I think the agreement, no one should really expect that they can solve all the problem. It's a new challenge. It's not a Chinese, not American, it's a global, and there's a lot of technical difficulties. But I think both sides, major countries on cyber, are willing to discuss. And also the term they use, it's not like a cyber threat, but rather cyber crime. This is also the term used. I think that both
they're trying to lower it a little bit.
Not point finger to each other, but rather to think it's a common challenge. Of course, you talk about a low point. Maybe the South China Sea, there's not some kind of breakthrough. Although China talk about China don't want the militarization, but we do not see the deliver. I think the real challenge is like 3 months after, 6 months after, where they can deliver on the economic side and also cooperation side.
And
but the trip itself is very, very successful.
Yeah, and keep that momentum going.
Sure.
Victor Gao, you know, there's been big headlines here about the Chinese economy, the Chinese stock market. Some people have called this a reassurance tour by President Xi that reforms and economic growth is still on track. Do you think that was achieved both in Seattle and here in Washington?
Definitely, I think President Xi Jinping has been very effective in delivering the fundamental point or message about the underlying Chinese economy, as well as the stock market movements or the share prices. I think in the medium and longer term perspective, the Chinese fundamentals in the economic sector remain very strong. In the immediate present, I think there are challenges that we need to deal with, and President Xi Jinping has been very clear about the tasks and the challenges that we need to stay on top of that. And China is not in a position to be complacent at all about the challenges. This is a major transitional mode that we are going through in the Chinese economy. But, you know, if the Chinese economy slows down to about 7% or even 6.8% by the end of the year, this is still a very strong growth rate compared with any other more developed countries in the world. And therefore, I think President Xi Jinping's analysis is very much in line with the realities and the circumstances on the ground here in China. We will do our best to deliver on the economic side. This is important not only for China, but also for the global economy, including that of the United States.
Yeah, we're actually watching pictures as you talk, Victor, of the actual beginning of the state dinner. You see the Obama's there dressed in classical tuxedo and a beautiful black dress, waiting for the president, and of course the Chinese First Lady. This it doesn't get more American pomp and ceremony than this, does it, Cheng Li?
Oh, absolutely. That you see the China's leaders. This is exactly what Xi Jinping and the Chinese delegation want to have, and they got it.
Yeah, it's quite special. I feel a bit guilty about moving on, considering it looks such a great affair. But this isn't the end of the trip. He's going to the United Nations in the next 24 hours. He has the first speech he's ever given in front of the General Assembly. It's also a pivotal time for the world in terms of moving away from perhaps a unipolar world into a more multipolar world. What's he going to say, and what vision are we going to have?
Well, absolutely. That actually, you already see that in the President Obama and Xi Jinping's dialogue, they already talk about the shared responsibility in areas of poverty release and also humanitarian aid and food safety and anti-terrorism. These are global issues, not the bilateral issues. So tomorrow in the UN and the day after tomorrow, he will make it very clear that China wants to be a responsible stakeholder, wanted to play an important role, not to change the international system, not to challenge the international system.
But maybe modify it a little.
That's right, but also contribute to bilateralism. And again, next year, China will be the host country and for G20. And there are a lot of activities. Again, China wanted to emphasize that point.
Victor Gao, what do you think President Xi is going to say at the UN about China's place in the world and its changing place in the world?
Well, first of all, China is getting more and more important as a global power. Xi Jinping has been saying that China is getting closer and closer to the real center of the world on the global stage. And this is happening as we speak and will continue to happen in the years and decades to come. Secondly, I would say President Xi Jinping will pledge that China will be a responsible global leader using the United Nations as the framework for global leadership rather than changing the international order. And also, I would say that his state visit to the United States, which preceded his speech at the United Nations General Assembly, is very meaningful because if China and the United States can coordinate their major positions on major global issues and they can present similar, if not identical, cases to the world through the United Nations, then the world will be a better place. And this is what the United Nations will need going forward.